Hi, everyone. It's just Sarah today. I thought I'd hop on for a little impromptu episode because Matty is on tour with Kainalu for pretty much the rest of the month, which is awesome. I hope they're having a great time on the road. But it's been a few weeks since we watched our most recent movie, still on the topic of possession. And I have a feeling that by the time Matty gets back, it's no longer going to be fresh in our heads. And we're going to move on to another movie, and then I will have been traumatized for nothing. So I just thought I'd hop on the mic and take you on this traumatic journey with me. So let's buckle up, and I'll tell you a little bit about The Dark and the Wicked. Since Maddie's away, I am trying to force my husband, Ben, to join me on this episode. Hi, Ben.
Hey.
And by the way, if this episode quality is rougher than usual, it's because I'm the one who's setting up all the equipment. I'm the one editing it. And usually Maddie uses his expert editing and mixing skills to do all of that. Any music you hear on the show is original. Maddie makes all that stuff. So shout out Maddie for all the stuff you do. You are awesome. But yeah, sorry in advance if the quality is lacking. Also, by the way, the name of the Cronenberg movie I mentioned on the last episode is Crimes of the Future, in case you're interested in checking it out. So today we are continuing the theme of possession, and we're talking about a movie that traumatized me a lot. The 2020 movie The Dark and the Wicked, directed and written by Brian Bertino. So just, little disclaimer, as you know, this is a horror podcast. You can expect that we're going to be discussing disturbing topics, but this movie, I would say it was especially rough. So I'm going to list a few content warnings in case you're interested in checking out the movie, because I think it was probably particularly triggering, but just content warnings for grief, self-harm, suicide, and caring for a loved one at the end of life. So if those are things that you are sensitive to, just, take care of yourself. So Ben, we usually flip a coin and do a 60-second recap of the movie. Are you up for that?
Sure.
Okay. Let me pull up a little coin flipper app. Heads or tails?
I'm going to go tails.
Okay. So it's heads. So it's me. I'm going to have you set a timer for 60 seconds, also known as 1 minute.
All right. 1 minute. Ready, set, go.
Okay, this is a movie about two siblings, Louise and Michael, and they go home to their family farm where their dad is on his deathbed. He is comatose, and their mom has been taking care of him. Their parents live on a rural sheep farm in Texas, very isolated, and they come home and they realize that something is very wrong, that their mom is not doing well, and while they're home, their mom ends up killing herself. And these two siblings are now responsible for taking care of their father, and creepy stuff is happening, and they're realizing that this is more than just grief. This is that maybe there's possession happening, and they find their mom's journal, and it's really scary. So that's kind of the movie.
All right. And that's 1 minute exactly.
Okay. So how do you think I did with the recap?
Good.
Okay. So now some questions. Did the movie scare you? Did it scare you while you were watching it? Why or why not?
Yes and no. It kind of started off strong and was big on jump scares, but those got to be a little bit predictable towards the end,
Yeah.
which kind of took away from the scare of it.
I agree. They were so focused on making it unpredictable, but it got into a pattern that became predictable.
Yeah.
What was the scariest moment for you? And also, do you generally get scared watching scare? Like, what's your scare level on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 is I'm a big scaredy cat, and 5 is I'm not a scaredy cat. Where are you on the scaredy scale?
I don't know. It's hard to be objective. Comparatively, in our little group, I'd say probably about a 4, 4.5.
Do you think you're more or less scared than Matty?
Probably less scared.
Pretty brave. Yeah, so what was the scariest moment for you? If there was a scariest moment.
So, spoilers. They do a lot of building tension, followed shortly by a jump scare, like in the barn or the sheep pen. So the first one of those was like a pretty good spooking moment.
Are you referring to like the face? Or what are you referring to? And by face I mean the very first scene, I think within the first 5 minutes, they're showing the goats or the sheep and there's a face, like a demonic face amongst them.
Yeah. So I only got a very brief glimpse at that.
I think we all did.
But just the general setting, it's nighttime, middle of the nowhere, like kind of creepy sounds, but pretty quiet, and then like huge loud rattle, and the sheep go crazy. Like, okay, something's happening. That's a little scary, and it like that feels kind of real too.
Mm-hmm.
Of like something creepy happened at night.
Yeah.
I'm outside. I don't like that.
I think there was something too, and I know I can't wait till Matty comes back and tells you what he thought about this, because while he was watching the movie, he's like, Sarah's making such a big deal out of this. But the horseshoe thing kind of freaked me out, and I know I was focusing on that, but maybe you can describe this, because you were the one who kind of explained it to us originally, the deal with the horseshoes in the movie.
Yeah, so part of the like farm decor, if you want to call it that, is just like a lot of stuff kind of hanging on strings. There's bottles and bits and bobs, but there's also horseshoes, and like those are a classic like luck symbol. Open side up, full luck. Every time there's a scare out in by the sheep, like immediately they zoom in on one of the horseshoes like tipping upside down.
And the mom keeps going outside and she keeps writing them and they keep reversing. Yeah. In general, does the concept of possession scare you?
I'm kind of a skeptic. Like, the core concept isn't that scary, but you can go a lot of creepy places with it.
And along with that, I know I keep asking you questions. What I really want to do is discuss the film with you. So let me just ask you 2 more questions and then we can just talk about it. What did possession look like in this film and who was possessed?
So, as far as what possession looked like, I think there's kind of 2 parts to that. So, something we'd kind of agreed on is like it plays a lot on those intrusive thoughts that you have in like regular disturbing moments. So I think kind of lowering inhibitions to those.
To your intrusive thoughts. Oh, yeah, where you're acting on your intrusive thoughts.
Yeah. And
which is scary. That's really scary.
Like, that's probably thematically the scariest part of the whole thing,
yeah.
I think. And also, like, there is a lot of, like, and this is more classic supernatural stuff, like, you can't trust what your eyes are seeing all the time.
Totally. Okay, a story I want to tell about this movie, The Dark and the Wicked, was over the summer. we decided, Matty, Ben, myself, and one of our friends, we were going to have a scary movie night. And we came up with a list of suggestions. And this was one of the movies that was on that list. And we all kind of voted what was our top pick for the night. And I got outvoted. So Maddie and Ben both kind of voted for The Dark and the Wicked. And I think I voted for Malignant. And because I knew that this was a really scary movie. And so they gave me the option. They're just like, okay, if we start watching the movie and you get scared, you can tap out. And so we made it about 20 minutes into the movie. And I was like, nope, I am not watching that. No way. And we turned it off.
Yeah. And I think, like, a point I kind of want to bring up is, horror isn't one size fits all. And, like, we kind of talked about a scare tolerance a little bit. I kind of break up your general horror movie into like 3 different things. Like, there's like fear, which, what you feel in the moment, or if you can't sleep at night.
That's so interesting because that's something we try to pinpoint on this show.
Yeah.
So I love hearing I love hearing what fear means to you.
Yeah, so the fear is like that, just, gut reaction, whatever. There's the gore aspect, which, that you can kind of take that one at face value. But then there's just like the emotional damage side of things too. So like for this movie,
I think we can get into a little bit of spoilers. I think you kind of have to.
Yeah. So the gore, I would say, for a horror movie is medium low. Like, there's for sure some gross stuff that happens, but it's not outlandish for the genre, I don't think. For me, this movie, medium gore, kind of predictable jump scares. Like, you can sleep at night, but
you can,
like, with the intrusive thoughts and the way that some of the gore is presented, it is quite a bit higher than average on the like emotional damage side of things.
Yeah, so within the first 20 minutes, well, you start the movie, and like I was saying, I get to get into plot a little bit. Matty doesn't let me get into plot, but he's not here to stop me. But yeah, the film opens, you've got it's very clear of isolation. You've got the mom alone, and she's just moving around the house alone. And by alone, I mean like her husband is incapacitated.
They don't ever specify an illness, but he's bedridden, and that's pretty much what it is. It's full-time care.
Yeah. And so she's moving around in a they've made the atmosphere very unsettling. She has a sewing room that's full of very creepy mannequins that those were Chekhov's mannequins. They were not Chekhov's mannequins. I thought they were going to be Chekhov's mannequins, but they were not. What'd you say?
Yeah, so for anybody that's hoping for this, the mannequins do not get possessed and attack people.
But they are really creepy looking. But she's going around and she's humming hymns to herself. She's got all of these superstitious symbols, like Ben was talking about, the horseshoes, crosses, and they come in hard with the sounds, like you were talking about. They have that. What is that? How would you describe that sound that, it's silence and then really loud? It's very Hereditary vibes. Drink every time we say Hereditary on this show.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a word for it, but like that demon bass sound that they do. I don't know.
Yeah. So we started watching this movie with our friends. But we reached this point in the movie within the first 20 minutes, and I was like, fuck no, we are stopping. I'm not continuing to watch this. And a few days later, Matty and I had a conversation, and I said, okay, if we are committed to doing this podcast, I will watch whatever scary, awful, disturbing movies you want to watch, and I will not tap out. Let's go. So I have revoked my tap out privileges, which questionable choice, questionable decision for me. But it was kind of funny because when we started watching this movie again, we started watching with friends. We're giving it a second try because it is on the theme of possession. We get to this point, we're reaching that same point where we know this really horrible scene is coming up, and both me and Matty run out of the room. That was really funny.
Yeah. And like it was gross, but I think it's almost a cathartic moment. Like, not full spoilers, but like this is where that self-harm warning comes in.
Yeah.
And the moment itself is some gore, but I think they did a really good job. Like, they introduced the characters, but the full 18 or whatever minutes before that is setting up like all of the pain, all of the desperation that leads up to this moment. So I do think they did a really good job setting tones in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think where this film did really well, just in general and also in depicting possession, is showing possession as grief and intrusive thoughts. Because I definitely know when I have intrusive thoughts, which happens to me quite a lot, I feel like I'm possessed. I don't know if you've experienced that, but you're just like, why would I even think that? Like, that is actually a thought I've had where I'm just like, where did this even come from? You feel like something has overtaken your mind that is just putting this thought in there that should never have been there. And I think that showing that possession showing up in that way in this movie made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we're going to tie into that a little bit. And maybe you can relate to this, but I almost think that this movie would have been scarier if all the same things happened and it was never about possession.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
But, I mean, for those of us who do get some of those intrusive thoughts, like, that's a strategy. It's like you depersonalize it a little bit, which I think is what makes it less scary being the way that it is.
Mm-hmm. And I think also the grief aspect, because I know I was talking to my friend the other day about this film and about possession, and she was saying, oh, possession doesn't scare me because I would just be like, you need God in your life. And that was interesting about this movie because the mom did try to bring God into her life. I think we can presume that she was raised religious because she's humming hymns to herself. And I don't think, maybe you pick that up later in life, but it seems like that's something calling back to your childhood. But it's clear that she has been an atheist, that the family is non-religious. Yet she has all of these crosses, and she's turned to religion in these recent days as her husband, maybe as part of grieving or as part of this demon being in her house, just like she's turned to religion. And I think that was really interesting where, like she did try to bring God into her life and it didn't help her. And I think that is a really good metaphor for grief because sometimes like nothing makes it better.
Yeah, I think I don't have much to add to that. That was good. But just another piece to that is like as part of the husband's care, they have a nurse that comes to the home, and we never see her doing anything like identifiably medical. It's more so just her presence. She's got some of the religious symbols. She's almost taking like a guardian appearance versus, you don't see her on camera doing any medical work.
That's so interesting, especially because, spoilers, at one point the nurse becomes possessed, and again, self-harm warning, suicide warning. what changes her from being that guardian, do you think? There was a lot of stuff in the film where I didn't feel like it was as elegant as what was the movie When Evil Lurks, and that made me kind of upset because for me, this movie was really disturbing, and I felt afterwards just angry because after we finished watching When Evil Lurks, my impression that I took away was just appreciation, and it was extremely scary. Maddie and I actually found audio of me reacting immediately after watching that, and hopefully we will include it at some point. But it was genuinely scary, yet even though I was scared, I took away an appreciation for the craft. And I don't think that this was necessarily an altogether bad or poorly made film, but I was resentful after watching it. And I was just like, I was really traumatized, and was it worth it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good points. Like for me, I think the human aspects of it, and they do a great job building atmosphere, like just throughout the movie. I think there's a little bit of an identity crisis just from square one of, what is this? Is it going to be gritty and human and painful, or is it going to be like kind a little bit run of the mill, sort of visually stunning possession movie? Is it going to be a jump scare slasher? I think kind of those three just kind of got muddled a little bit, which hurt the overall product. But I think there is a lot of skill within each of those individual lanes there.
I totally agree with you. One thing I thought that they did well was they play on the characters' intrusive thoughts, just on them acting on their intrusive thoughts or their inhibitions being lowered, but they also very much prey on the audience's intrusive thoughts. For example, one scene that really stuck with me and I hated, but I have to give them props for it, the shower. Mm-hmm. Horrible. I think when you're in the shower is a very vulnerable moment. I think probably many people can attest. I've actually never seen Psycho, but that the Psycho shower scene damaged them. Because you are picturing yourself in that situation, and there's a scene where something very scary happens when one of the characters is in the shower, and that's totally an intrusive thought you have. That's an intrusive thought I have. And so that was kind of, I don't know, excellent, but also terrible. Was it you leave the film with carrying those same intrusive thoughts with you that you might have had anyway. Like, they're thoughts that just on your own you might be afraid of, and then they amplify that, and I hated that.
Yeah.
In a good way. Maybe in a good way. I don't know.
Yeah. Do we want to take a little bit of a left turn here?
Yeah. This is whatever we want it to be. Maddie's not here, and I'm the one editing it.
So something that I noticed a little bit in the various, not chapters, but like with all the characters, they kind of each have their moment. And it seemed to me like their moments were kind of gendered. Like the female characters was, fear and loss and loneliness was a big part of those, or not being alone in the shower, but that vulnerability. And there were kind of two main male characters that had their moments, and those were more about defeat.
That's so interesting. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so one of the characters, I think he's first in the movie, but there's this character who's kind of the farmhand. He isn't part of the family, but he's been on the farm forever. And our introduction to him is just, seeing him change a tire take care of the sheep. He's just kind of there in the background making things go right. And through some trickery, he's led to believe that the children have been possessed, been killed, what have you. And that's the moment that breaks him, and he ends up killing himself over that. Once he gets that visual that he's lost already.
That was a scene that was kind of confusing to me that I want to talk more about, because you said, he sees that the children have been killed. If I'm remembering correctly, he sees Louise like in a slinky little nightdress coming at him, and she's cutting herself all over.
Yeah.
So I wondered a little bit why. I can understand what you mean by like, oh, I failed the children, but like it was weird to me that she's wearing this little nightie.
That I don't have a good perspective on.
Mm-hmm. That could again be an intrusive thought. Or like you don't want to sexualize this neighbor who you probably saw as a young woman growing up, but I don't know, involuntarily doing that.
Yeah, I'm going to refrain from English teaching that one. Just, I don't have a good cohesive thought for it, so I'm going to let it be. But that doesn't mean that it isn't anything.
I think I don't have that much more to say about the movie. I thought it was really funny the moment when the priest, who's clearly the devil or the demon, is just like, come outside. Come outside.
Oh, yeah. They have, like, a very clearly the devil priest character who, at that point in the movie, he's almost a comic relief.
It was pretty funny, yeah.
Like, shout out to the actor. He does a great creepy priest, but...
Come outside. It's one of those things where, like, no, don't come outside. But I did think that the way the characters behaved, it was one of those movies where you're like, stop, don't do that. Why are you doing that? But you could also really relate to most of the stuff that they were doing. Like, Louise obsessively reading her mother's really disturbing diary.
Yeah, I think all the, like, normal human behavior is very relatable. Yeah. Very, very well thought out.
So, one of the things Matty and I usually ask on this show is, did the movie stay with you? Like, now that some time has passed after you saw it, what are your impressions now versus when you first saw it? I know I said my initial impression was resentment, and I'm not feeling that resentment anymore. Now I have more appreciation for the film. I'm still not feeling about it the way I felt, like the exultation I felt about When Evil Lurks, but I'm not resentful anymore, I would say. Maybe if I rewatched it, I would be. No, I have more of a, I don't know, a better understanding of it, I think.
I don't know, I think we're sort of in the right age demographic for this, for it to be a little bit introspective, in the sense that, okay, demonic possession probably not going to happen, but our parents are getting to be an age where it's just far enough away, but we do have to think about like how we will handle that situation. And I guess that's probably the more lasting thing for me, is just like, oh yeah, some of this is real. Like,
yeah, genuinely. And to that end, one thing that I think is kind of interesting, that farm they shot on, that's the writer-director's like farm where he grew up.
Interesting. Was
like,
it that creepy? That
farm. I don't know, but I guess it was probably I think there has to be more significance to that than just it was an affordable place to shoot.
Yeah, I'm sure the nostalgia played into it. And I mean, I can see a childhood fear of that much open space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the isolation. I think there are a lot of horror movies that are specifically isolation films, and this came out again in 2020, which was during the pandemic. and I think everyone all over the world was feeling pretty isolated, and was probably a really relatable film at the time of its release.
Yeah, and that's another thing with any of these ratings is, I mean, horror's individual, but even for the same person, it varies so much depending on your setting, like how the last day or week or year has gone for you, like what headspace you're in. It can affect you totally differently.
So, would you recommend this movie? And if so, who would you recommend it to?
I would say I would recommend it. It's not a, I'm not going to just throw it on for the crowd, but if someone is an experienced horror person, I would recommend it. Again, not because I found it not particularly scary in the moment, but I do think that having some experience with the tropes does help you appreciate some of the tension building moments in the movie, or just kind of give you an appreciation for some of the craft to it.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you've said. Would I recommend this movie? If you had asked me immediately after watching, I would have said no. I would have said, fuck no, don't watch this movie. I didn't like it. It just traumatized me, and I wasn't sure it was worth it, like I was saying before. How do I feel now? I don't hate it. I can't say that I'm going to recommend it, but I think if someone were to come to me and ask me, oh, should I watch this movie? I would be like, sure.
Yeah, again, it's not really a party movie, but for the experienced horror viewer, like, it's a solid addition.
It's probably good for one of those movie nights with your friends where you're all huddled. I mean, this was literally us. You're all huddled up under blankets and you want to be scared together. I think this is a good one for that, because you're going to be scared on the gore level. You're going to be scared on the jump scare level. You're going to trauma bond with your friends. And also, they're like, I don't know, that priest. Come outside. Come outside. So yeah, thank you so much for being on the show, Ben. Matty, fuck you. No. But next time, Matty will be here, and maybe we'll hear him share his thoughts on the movie. You might even get to hear some live reacts, or I guess not. They're not live anymore. Well, our friends are live, but some reactions from immediately after watching the movie. And maybe we'll even talk about another movie. So a few of the ones we're looking at, one of my friends recommended Insidious, and a Japanese movie that I'm sorry, I should have looked up how to pronounce this before, Noroi, The Curse. And I really want to watch The Wailing. And also I think Matty or someone brought up Incantation. So send us your possession movie recommendations. Maybe we'll put out a poll to decide what movie we should watch next. If you enjoyed the show, we would love it if you took a sec to rate and review us. And you can follow us on Instagram. It's all one word, horror/stories. It's slash spelled out. horror/stories_pod. I think that's our name. It might not be. I mean, check it out. Try it. See what happens. And that's it. Okay. Love you. Bye.